Call to order the regular city council meeting for Monday, February 6th, 2023 at 5:30 PM. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Burlingame.
Here.
Evans.
Here.
Janser.
Here.
Olson. Here. Pittner.
Here.
Padragula.
Here.
Ross.
Here. Item 2, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to item number 3, which is the mayor's report. Item 3.1 is a proclamation for Giving Hearts Day. Whereas the goals of Giving Hearts Day are to raise awareness of the charitable nonprofit sector and its organizations in North Dakota, to promote online giving, and to provide donors with an opportunity to multiply the results of their giving. And whereas Giving Hearts Day is a powerful example of the private sector providing assistance to charitable nonprofit organizations that work to improve the quality of life for many members of our community. And whereas the charitable nonprofit sector supports individuals and families with quality programs, materials, and funds that promote, encourage, and sustain independence and self-sufficiency. And whereas in order to provide these benefits, charities need ongoing funds to continue providing long-term sustainable services to our residents in need. And whereas these charities have demonstrated a need for collaboration and resources and have combined their efforts for this 24-hour fundraising event that is dedicated to inspiring online donations at impactgiveback.org. Now, therefore, do I, Tom Ross, Mayor of the City of Minot, hereby proclaim today, February 9th, 2023, as Giving Hearts Day in Minot. And I call upon public officials, business and community leaders, and all Minot residents to observe this day with appropriate activities and programs, recognize charitable nonprofits, their staffs, and volunteers who provide essential services to our community, and support Giving Hearts Day by volunteering or providing financial support to local charities in Minot and Central North Dakota at givingheartsday.org. Mayor proclaims February 9th, 2023 as Giving Hearts Day, signed by Thomas Ross. Mayor, is there anybody here who would like to take an opportunity to speak?
To do what?
Why don't you come up and tell
I
us?
thought we were going to do a photo.
Oh, we will.
Yeah, we will. Tell us about it, how people see what Minot area organizations are part of Giving Hearts Day, how much was raised last year, those kinds of things.
Yeah, those are all good ideas, but I don't know them off the top of my head. But you can find out for yourself by going to givingheartsday.org. But locally, we also have a site that's minotghd.com, and then that shows all the local nonprofits that are participating. And I believe there's about 17 that are participating this year. And I'm not sure what year this is. It's maybe the 12th year of Giving Hearts Day, I think it is, somewhere in that range. But it's been very successful for all the nonprofits that have been participating. I know this is probably our 8th year participating with Dakota Hope, but it's been very successful. And I think there's like over 500 nonprofits participating statewide, and it's Western Minnesota too, because it kind of comes out of Fargo. So yeah, it's been very successful. And any other questions?
I inadvertently said that it was today, and it's actually on Thursday. So
Right.
my bad.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, you gave me a little heart attack. That's okay. Yeah, thank you.
So yes, when
take
you
a
do
quick
go to
picture.
that website, the GHD site, it has all of the things, and you can pick your organization right there. It says donate. So that's minotghd.com.
Right.
Yep.
And that has all the local ones here.
Yep.
And then when you click on that, it'll bring you to the Giving Hearts Day page. So
Yep.
yeah, you guys want to come up? Grab our sign there, Mike. Mike's with Men's Winter Refuge,
ahead.
Salvation Army.
Perfect.
Marshall.
Here we go.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Moving on to some of the meetings and opportunities I had to meet with some of our neighbors here in Minot since the last meeting. Number of meetings. It was a busy few weeks for me, so we had ranging from lunch with football candidates for Minot State University to the honorary commanders. We had a couple of legislative forums, Task Force 21, Minot Chamber EDC meeting, dinner with the NDSU architecture students and a follow-up press conference, MAC meeting, and probably 10 or 15 other meetings above and beyond that. So it was a busy week, but it was a busy few weeks, but it was a fun few weeks at all these meetings. So if there are any further questions or no further questions, we can move on to the city manager's report.
Mr. Mayor, council members, be happy to answer any questions the council may have with regards to the city manager memo or anything else. Otherwise, I don't have anything further to report.
Anything for the city manager? Carrie?
Following up on the snow removal RFP, is the deadline for that?
Deadline was Friday, so I did get a draft of the bid tabulations from our public works director today. So we're working as staff to preparing that to bring forward to council at the next council meeting.
Great. Appreciate your work.
Anything else for the city manager? If not, we will move on to item number 5, and that is the city attorney report.
Mayor and council, I also submitted a written report, and I'm available for any questions you may have.
Any questions for Steph? If not, let's move on to item 6, and that's consent items. We have been asked to pull 2 items from the consent agenda, and that is 6.3 and 6.15. Are there any other items that need to be pulled from the consent? Any other items? If not, what are the wishes of the council?
Move approval on the remaining items.
Second.
Moved by Lisa, second by Paul. Any discussion? Any further discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Olson?
Yes.
Bittner,
Yes.
Paugula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Burlingame?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Moving on to the pulled items, 6.3, administrative approvals. This was asked to be pulled by Councilman Burlingame. Scott?
I'll move approval for a point of discussion. Second.
Motion by Scott, second by Paul. Discussion. Scott?
Yeah, I just wanted to abstain from this as Independence Incorporated as who I work for is conducting a raffle for our chili bowl, so I felt it was best if I abstained from this vote. So that's all I had.
Any other questions or comments? If not, please call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Bittner,
Yes.
Paugula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes. Moving on to 6.15, which was asked to be pulled by Councilman Burlingame.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move approval on this as well. Second.
Motion by Scott, second by Paul. Scott?
I'm just curious as to where the $600 number came about and why that is billed and what the thought process is behind it. So Dan, if you could help me out, I'd greatly appreciate that.
Mayor Ross, Alderman Burlingame. Honestly, that it used to be like $100. And 5 years ago, when we redid the lease, we looked at it, and at that time, the administration looked at doing $600 in discussions with Rainbow Gardens, because we'd been helping them out with some work and stuff in there. Since then, like I said, they've taken over all of the maintenance and everything. So instead of increasing it at all, we've left it at that.
Sure.
So not a real good background on it, but that's all I can tell you on it.
I was just curious. I mean, I'm very supportive of this project. I think it's wonderful that this opportunity can exist. I'm glad the city can do it. I was just curious as to why that number, and I hope that it's acceptable to everybody and we can continue offering this for as long as possible. So that's all I had.
Sure.
Thanks, Dan. Any further questions, comments? If not, please call the roll.
Burlingame?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Bittner, Paugula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes. Let's move on to action items. Action item 7.1, employee parking in the Renaissance parking garage at the new city hall. What are the wishes of the council?
I have a motion. I would like to make a motion for alternative 3 to make the parking free in the garage for everyone with a designated area for city employees.
I have a motion by Carrie. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Lisa. Discussion. Carrie?
It's 2022, the revenues from this garage were $37,462, not a whole bunch of money. I think definitely employees who are moving over with City Hall should have free parking, at least until we figure out some alternative. But I think for just administrative reasons and efficiency reasons, just making it free with a section for employees is what makes the most sense to me.
Steve?
Question about that. I don't have my little thingy here. When you say free, does that mean free for anybody parking? Or
Yeah,
just
that was my
employees?
motion. So, yeah, so it would be open to the public for free.
So we would be charging for the one ramp, but not for this one? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Does that, I guess I have a question, does that fall, if we're giving a benefit, does that fall on a taxable issue? Payroll tax issue if it's a benefit after?
I would let the finance director speak more specifically to that, but my understanding was if we're charging for parking for the general public and we're providing it for free to the employees, there's an opinion out there that we're looking into about whether or not that would be considered a fringe benefit, which then the city employees would then be charged taxes in their pay stubs as reported on their W-2 forms. That would be outlined as a fringe benefit. But if the motion passes that Alderwoman Evans proposed tonight, you would not be providing employees free parking that isn't available free to the rest of the public, so I don't think that would apply.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that's correct. We'd have to do a little more research, and part of that will depend on whether it's a reduced rate or if there's no charge at all.
Okay. Thank you, Dave. Any other questions? Comments? If not, please call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Padragula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Burlingame?
Yes.
Just one note, when we do make the signage for the employees in that garage, if it can say, after business hours, that anybody could sort of park there, like we have, so, that's, the signs would say that, right? Because we wouldn't have most employees needing that during nighttime and weekends, would we, Dave?
Mr. Mayor, Alderwoman Evans, yeah, we would have to do some additional signage. There are a couple other things that we'll have to address as a result of this as well. We had budgeted revenue from the parking to offset the cost of maintaining the parking ramps. So if we are going to forego that revenue, we'll have to have another revenue source to continue to pay for the upkeep with that. The next thing, there could be an unintended consequence where folks utilizing the other ramp are now going to migrate to the Renaissance. So that's something that could weigh in. It could reduce revenues in the other ramp as well.
Right.
Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to that, just sort of thinking this through. So, if we're cordoning off a certain section or a certain number of parking spots for city employees, are we still, in fact, out of trouble with respect to what Harold was talking about with regard to, obviously those spots aren't available to the public. So we're taking a section of the parking ramp and setting it aside specifically for city employees, correct?
Mr. Mayor, Alderman Janser, I think the way I understood the motion is that the parking ramp would be free of charge to anyone using it, and they would specifically designate areas for the city employees to park in.
And we've never had an issue, I think, with it being full, right? So I think your question is with the addition of these spots for 70 employees, would that mean there may not be enough room for the general public to park there? And I think it's something we just have to monitor. Like, it's predicted it won't be, right?
Mr. Mayor, Alderwoman Evans, currently, I think it would be difficult, it's comparing apples to oranges, because if you open it up and there's no charge to park in there, we have no idea what the usage would be, as opposed to parking on the street with 2-hour parking. So I think it'd be difficult to know exactly what the capacity will be. Currently, it is not fully utilized. There is room to park in there. As it sits right now, the middle section, the P2 level, is not utilized very much because of the construction project going on and the alley being blocked to access that level. I haven't been on level 1 for a while there to see, but I know the upper level, the enter from the south on the Renaissance, does have a number of people that utilize that level on a consistent basis.
So I guess we just pay attention, right? And, maybe in 6 months see, what it's looking like. I mean, we certainly don't want to, take away the initial intent of those parking garages was to, have people, frequenting and residing and shopping downtown and not have to, fight for parking. So we certainly want to be true to that. But, let's just see what it looks like after this all happens.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, we would probably need an effective date for this because we have a number of people that prepay for their parking passes. So some of them may have purchased parking services there through the end of the year, which would put us in a situation of having to issue refunds for those folks.
Carrie, would you have your intention clarification?
When, I'm going to defer to the city manager who has more sense of when we actually when employees will be reporting for work at the new facility.
If I understand, it'll probably be about mid-April timeframe before we're officially moving in over there.
So I'll add to my motion, effective April 1st, 2023. And then you just have to, I guess, issue refunds. But we have a precedent for that. Yeah. Didn't we have to do that with last year? Dave loves that.
Do I have to get acceptance from the second?
So the motion, I believe, is already acted on, right?
Yeah.
So I would just make a new motion.
Okay.
Carrie?
With the whole thing again, or just the dates, the effective date?
I think just I would amend the previous action to include the effective
Okay.
date.
So the motion is to, the first one, to make parking free in the Renaissance Garage effective April 1st, 2023.
Yes, second.
Any further discussion? Steve?
Not to be cynical or flippant, but this might take a little bit of the pressure off with parking downtown during the winter where people are complaining that we don't have enough space. So that might help with that too a little bit.
Thank you. Anything else? If not, please call the roll.
Evans?
Yes.
Janser?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Pittner?
Yes.
Padragula?
Yes.
Ross?
Yes.
Burlingame.
Yes.
Moving on to item 7.2, Storm Sewer District 121 Puppy Dog Coulee Engineering Contract Amendment. What are the wishes of the council?
I'll move it.
Second. Moved by Mark, second by Paul. Any discussion? Steve?
Just a question for, I think it would be Lance. I know that that's a huge drainage area, and most people aren't aware of its extent. And, I mean, it's been a while since we've done the engineering, and we'll have to redo that. Do you have just a rough idea if the development of that, I think it's called Tracks Concept, that neighborhood and the hospital will have any impact? Because that's going to be a lot of asphalt. It's probably not going to soak up rain, and we'll probably pass it along into the storm sewer system, would be my guess.
So, Mr. Mayor and Alderman Padragula, the way that our stormwater ordinances work is any new development would have to match their post-development runoff with their pre-development runoff. So if, for instance, if the tracks would generate 20 cubic feet per second in pre-development runoff after everything's built, they could only discharge 20 cubic feet per second.
Oh, so it won't add to it?
Right. So over time, what happens is you have more and more water that just gets metered out. So instead of your coulee running dry during a period of dry time, it'll always have some water in it. So you'll see that in urban drainage over time as more and more development happens. You just kind of have a constant flow that trickles through there now.
So we're
And
not going
that's
to have
what
to
we're
upsize.
expecting on this. So we have designed those pipes anticipating growth in the watershed, but that is with the assumption that everyone is going to be following the city ordinance as development happens.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Lance.
You're welcome.
Any other comments, questions? If not, please call the roll.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Move on to item 7.3 on the agenda, recycling carts purchase. What are the wishes of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I'll move approval.
Moved by Scott, second by Carrie. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Janser,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes. Let's move on to action items 8.1, Ad Hoc Committee for Childcare in Minot. Scott?
Mr. Mayor, I believe my right thing to do is I make a motion. The mayor shall solicit applications to establish a committee comprised of no more than 11 members. The committee shall be charged with exploring childcare crisis in Minot and making recommendations to the city council. And I'll discuss that further after the second, hopefully.
I'll second.
Second by Steve.
So,
Scott?
Mr. Mayor, just to kind of go through for the audience and everybody that hasn't read this, the kind of steps that I've proposed here is that the council make a recommendation on, or the committee, and by the way, just to be clear, as I read it, committee, after discussions with the mayor, it was decided that this would be a committee, not an ad hoc committee. So it wouldn't necessarily have an end date or anything like that. So the kind of points of recommendations is the current lack of childcare effects on the city council's ability to fill key positions, that the lack of to make recommendations on the lack of childcare's effects on the local economic development, the lack of childcare's effect on military families at the Minot Air Force Base, how economic development funds can be leveraged to better improve childcare options in Minot, review current city council ordinances regarding childcare and make recommendations on any needed changes or additions, to monitor and report on childcare-related legislation in order to maximize the city's ability to respond to statewide incentives for childcare, to explore efforts in other regional communities to address the childcare shortage and make recommendations on the feasibility of those solutions here in Minot, and to make other recommendations on how the city can improve the availability and affordability of childcare. My recommendation is that the community members must consist of the city manager or an appointee, 2 members of the city council, which I would love to be one other Minot city employee, 2 members who represent childcare providers, 1 childcare licensing expert, 2 parents of children who make use of childcare, and one private employer and 1 representative of the chamber EDC. So, kind of as a background, obviously the childcare crisis exists across our country and across our state, but we're not elected to fix those problems there. We're elected to fix the problems here. It's greatly affected led and increased our workforce shortage with thousands of jobs going unfilled. I've heard from families who want to work, but they're not able to find affordable, accessible, and available childcare. I think this is a step to begin a bigger conversation and to maybe provide some direction for our city on how we can respond. So with that, I'd gladly answer any questions anybody has.
Carrie?
Scott, I'm curious because we usually establish these committees with giving the mayor the appointment powers, why you chose to solicit applications for this.
To be perfectly honest with you, Carrie, I don't have a great answer for that. I don't know the difference. This is my first time appointing a committee, believe it or not, so I don't know the
Well, I mean, it just, then we have to have a process, and what is the application, when is the deadline, who then chooses, does the mayor have to look through those and choose? It just is sort of more cumbersome than the mayor just, appointing, 11 people.
sure.
I don't know if there was a preference or not. Like-
Sure, thank you for clarifying that. My thought was I want to make sure that we cast a wide net to get as diverse as people as possible. So one of my questions was going to be to the mayor to ask him, how would he like people to do this? If it's send me an email, let me know, just to kind of get a wider net of potential people that might
Right,
want to
and
do
usually
this.
it's like, if it's your idea, like it's, hey, Tom, here's a few people to think of, like anybody can email Tom and be like, hey, we think this would be a good person, but that ultimately, the mayor does the appointment. But certainly it's the person who's establishing the committee really is the engineer.
Okay, well, and that makes perfect sense, I guess. And again, Mr. Mayor, depending on what your preference is, that was my intention all along. It's obviously your job to appoint this committee. I just wanted to get as many different people applying and to let the public know that this exists so that we could get a nice diverse group of candidates for you to choose from. But I will yield to your position on that.
Oh, you need an answer. A thought here too was the last time I was out on base having coffee with some of the leadership out there, because of the issue of childcare is so critical up on base as well, I think we should have something that encompasses, and I know, Scott, we had talked about the base has a working group, an active working group, a childcare working group, so I'm kind of hoping we can maybe massage this into an all-inclusive type of a group that also includes members, spouses and members of the Minot Air Force Base.
I would definitely consider, yes. I mean, and that's why I put on there to kind of, the lack of childcare's effects on military families at Minot Air Force Base, as this committee has that discussion to integrate those folks into that at that point. So, and throughout the entire assignment of the group, so.
So I don't have a problem. I mean, I guess I would, if there are interested people, residents that want to serve on it, but I think it should be I think the group should be much larger to encompass the Minot Air Force Base. So I don't know if an amendment is to amend the membership to include a working group from the Minot Air Force Base?
A member of? You mean one member or somebody from FSS, right? That's a squadron that does childcare out
Well,
there.
but this was a group of parents.
Yeah, but we don't need like the whole group.
No, but I'm thinking, I mean,
Well, couldn't it be two parents? Couldn't they be, if they're parents, they would fit into the parents of children who make use of childcare, making sure one of those is a military family.
okay. That's
I don't know, unless there's somebody else in that working group that isn't a parent that would be impactful. But if the working group is mostly parents, we can just ensure that one of the sets of parents,
Okay.
right, is from from base.
Okay. I'm comfortable with that.
And if we need to, like, if it comes about, Scott, that like there is more members of like the Air Force community that wouldn't fit into any of these, we can also like change this as we're compiling the committee and say, oh, we need to add a specific
Absolutely.
piece for representatives from the Minot Air Force Base community. But if it's parents, they can fit in there. But
Yeah, and just to keep in mind too, with the representative from the Chamber EDC, that, they have also obviously served as a liaison with the base around this issue as well. So there's also their opportunity to provide input and feedback on this. But I would absolutely, I don't know if we need to do a motion or an amendment or if we can just stick with what it is. I think, Mr. Mayor, you have the appointing rights. If you want to appoint somebody from that population, you should probably do that.
Okay. No, I would, I don't think we have to make an amendment. I think we
Right.
can move forward
And I
with the
think too,
amendment.
as the committee gets going, the meetings will be open to the public, and the committee can invite, subject matter experts. So that gives opportunity to invite the people from the squadron, out there who isn't, because they maybe don't have to be on the committee, but you want to get their input so they can be, on the agenda for some of the committee meetings.
Exactly. And my kind of hope is that, this committee will take kind of these efforts, these kind of points, one by one, almost at meetings, or maybe a couple of them at a meeting, to this invite conversation
Right.
or input from this or from that, in order to kind of create that community conversation that I think is very much needed.
Lisa?
Yeah, thank you. I certainly support this motion, and I know that the motion is about the creation of the committee. And so, I just want to take one off and say that a few years ago, we did have a similar committee that met. And I think once this committee is established, probably one of the first things that they should do is look at the recommendations that came out of that. I honestly don't remember it. I didn't serve on it. I just remember that committee met. And so that might be a good place to kind of jump off and say, what recommendations did they have? Were any of them accomplished? That kind of thing. So just once the committee's going, something, if Michaela can find that information, that'd be great.
Anything else? If not, please call the roll.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Chancer,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Pittner,
Yes.
Padragula,
Yes.
Ross.
Yes. Just as a follow-up, if there's anybody who is watching online or in the audience, if you are interested, please reach out to the city. A simple email or a phone call to the clerk's office, and if you're interested, we'll get you, we'll begin the process as soon as possible and get the committee appointed, and we'll move forward from there. So, moving on to action item 8.2, the RFP for the downtown parking ramps. What are the wishes of the council? It's just information, just discussion? Okay. Brian, do you want to come take the lead? What? Jonathan?
Jonathan did it's Jonathan's memo. I don't care.
Thank you, Brian.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. For you this evening is a draft RFP for both downtown parking ramps for the rehabilitation and expansion of both structures to finish out the work that was started in 2015 to build above the ramps and also to possibly redevelop some of the space on the ground floor level. The RFP envisions a two-step process where we will invite companies to submit proposals to the city, and then a review committee would review those proposals and select finalists for a second round of interviews. Those interviews would be more of the proposal range, where we would look at their actual proposal and then rank them and submit them to the city council, where the city council would make the final decision on both ramps. There are some alternatives that's listed in the city council memo. Some of the alternatives are you can direct staff to emphasize the sale or the lease of the structures. You can direct staff to make additions to the documents before we release the RFP for public review. You could make the proposal to retain full control of both ramps. But under this proposal, the developer may lose interest. The council can choose to fully retain one or both of the properties, or you can choose to table this item until the NDSU architectural students have completed their round of drawings and visions for downtown Minot, which is expected to take until I think the month of May. So those are your options before you this evening. We would like to hear from the council, get some feedback on which alternative you would suggest.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions for Brian? Carrie?
Which alternative would you suggest?
Which one I would suggest?
Yes.
Mayor Ross, Alderwoman Evans. I think at this time it would be prudent to hold off on making a decision on the Renaissance ramp. I think we should move into City Hall first and see how that impacts that ramp before we make a decision. I think the central ramp is ready to go, and there's nothing holding that one back. If it were my decision, I would want to move forward at least with the central ramp this evening.
Right, because that one is off the tee, right?
Yes, but I think we should wait and see what happens with the Renaissance ramp after we move into City Hall.
Mark?
Do you know for a fact, are the architectural students are they looking at the central ramp, or, in their work, envisioning what should happen down there? Does anybody know that?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Janser, yes, they are looking at both ramps.
Scott?
Brian, what's the timeline of the NDSU students? I've read the article, but I didn't retain that.
Mayor Ross, Alderman Burlingame, the timeline is May. I think the first week of May is when they're supposed to have their proposal completed.
May 3rd.
Yeah, they
Third
will
week
be
in May.
presenting their proposal May 3rd in Fargo.
Right.
So Brian, is there anything you see as detrimental to this process if we waited till the students presented and maybe considered it in our like May 15th meeting? Is there something like that would?
Mayor Ross, Alderwoman Evans, there's no reason to rush. We
Okay.
can wait until May.
Okay.
The nice thing about this project is that the ground has already been broken. We can start this project in the middle of winter if we want to. We don't have to worry about
Okay.
breaking ground in the middle of winter. It'd be an easy project to start construction on in the winter months.
I mean, this isn't an action item, right? We're just giving you a sense of, I mean, what I would like to see then, just because the parking ramps are under consideration by the students in their plan, and if they are indeed presenting in May, is having this, that depending upon what their recommendations are, if any, on those, that we, put this on the agenda to direct action on May 15th.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody feels differently.
Mark?
I will make that motion that we table this until May 15th.
Well, it's not an action item. We don't have to make a motion.
Oh, it's just discussion? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, then let's just wait, see what happens.
I don't have anything for Brian unless somebody else does first.
Nope.
Brian wanted to
Thank
say.
you, Brian.
I agree. I had the opportunity to attend the working sessions with the NDSU students last week, and again, the excitement was palpable, to say the least, from whether it be community stakeholders, whether it be from downtown merchants or community partners. So again, I think it's prudent that we just wait until May, second week in May. I think that would be the direction that I would like to give staff, give the NDSU students an opportunity to have an unfiltered look at this and not have to worry like they're competing against an outside contractor or vendor that would come into those spaces, that they can have kind of have free reign to think as creatively as possible, not only with parking garages, but anything else that they might be looking at. But again, it's an exciting project to be a part of. Again, I think when it wraps up in May, if there's nothing of substance that comes out of the NDSU study and whatnot, I'm very excited to put this RFP out on our second meeting in May and move things forward. It's an opportunity that I think we've all been waiting for quite a few years. Now that we're able to do that, I'm more than excited to be able to do that. So again, I appreciate the RFP from staff, and again, I look forward to talking about it our second week in May.
Thank you, Paul. Steve?
I'm also excited about finally seeing some of our dreams fulfilled with these ramps. Two comments I'd make is that when it comes time to, and I'm fine with waiting for a couple of months, it makes sense if we're so close to have the benefit of what these outsiders, these young, bright, eager, unjaded, unbiased students might come up with. I think it'd be worth waiting a couple months. The two things I'd like to point out, though, is when it comes time to making the decision and looking at their report, the first thing I would like to have a sense of is how other cities manage this. Now, again, I don't know if that's something the students are prepared to come up with, or if we have to rely on our professionals in the development field for that. But I want to have a sense of what other towns are doing. I know in Bismarck they have 3 ramps. In Grand Forks they have at least 1. They may not as heavily be commercial or have the option of residential facilities as ours do, but I'd like to get some sense of how these are normally managed, and I think that would help us decide and maybe help us recruit even a developer. The second thing I want to emphasize, and this is even more important to me, is I think the process and whatever development agreements we come up with need to be absolutely transparent, need to be understandable by the public, not just us, not just the development professionals or the architects or the engineers, but I think the public needs to understand where the funding streams are, who's responsible for what. I think some of us were around when we started this parking ramp business, and one of the things that was most distressing to people was the fact of how complex it was. Nobody could understand what the arrangements were, what the deals were, who was responsible for what, who was benefiting financially, who was exposed to financial risk. So I think that for me will be a very, very high priority in making sure that we can understand it ourselves and the public can understand it and we can explain it to people and what the ultimate options turn out to be. My guess is that, my hope is that we will find some developer who will be able to put some housing and commercial space on the one ramp and probably the other one. But I think at this point it does make sense to wait until we get that NDSU study done. But again, for me, those would be two very important things to start thinking about even now, to make sure people understand what the development agreement is, which will hopefully be with developing or signing with somebody, and then having an idea of how that fits with what other communities do. Not that we necessarily have to follow it, but I'd like to know what the landscape is out there.
Thank you, Steve. I think this is just a wonderful opportunity where you show the private, public, and a
Partnership.
student collaboration. I think we're really on a doorstep of what could potentially be a huge victory downtown. To have them move forward, they come together with a plan. If it's a plan that is acceptable, then all of a sudden it's a plan that's attractive to a developer that's already got, it's already on the 50-yard line.
Right.
By having a plan and a vision for them to come in and develop. So I think I think it's to me a no-brainer to wait until the second meeting in May and see what these students can do. So, and like Paul, I mean, taking part in this process, watching these kids, seeing the passion in their eyes. This isn't just a class project bake sale. This is something that they understand the potential and the long-lasting generational effect that their work over these next few months is going to pay off. So I'm excited to see what happens, and I'm excited to see their plans and hopefully implement them. So thank you. Anything else? Okay. Is that enough direction, Brian? Let's move on to 8.3, and that's the budget ordinance updates. Mr. Lakefield, the floor is yours.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor Ross, members of the council. I'll keep this fairly brief. The finance department has been working on some proposed updates to the section of the Code of Ordinances that deals with the annual budget. And we just wanted to present some of the information here, again, to look for some guidance moving forward, if that is something that is that the council would be receptive to before we spend a bunch of staff time and decide that isn't the path that we want to go down. So just some background, the city implemented a new ERP system in November of 2020. And throughout that process, and we also continue the process of making business process improvements. And now we've run into some things where we have some stuff that is written in ordinance that isn't necessarily how the city has been operating, or that needs to be updated to allow for better efficiency within the city. So the finance department has established a finance policy committee made up of folks within the department to review these and make some suggestions, to work with our legal staff and other administration to present something going forward to address these outdated and inefficient policies and procedures. So our first topic was the annual budget ordinance, and we're just looking for some guidance. I'll go through some of the information here. So the annual budget ordinance is included in Code of City Ordinances, Chapter 2, Article 4, which is Financial Matters in Division 4. It was originally adopted in 1982, but it was updated in 1986, and as far as we're aware, we haven't had revisions since. Some of the potential purpose for the revisions would be to modernize the ordinance to reflect the city's current business practices, to set the ordinance to better suit the new ERP system functionality, along with the chart of accounts, to align with current North Dakota Century Code, Chapter 40-40, which is the municipal budget law, to streamline some council approvals and create a level of administrative approvals, and then to improve the turnaround time for future budget adjustments. So we'll go through some definitions, and as some of you are aware, a fund is our highest level of organization within our chart of accounts. The one you're most familiar with is generally our general fund. That is our largest fund within the city. We also have funds for things like the parking ramps, the library, the airport, water, sewer, sanitation are all their own fund. Our next level of organization is the org code, organization code, and that's a combination of the fund and the department, and we use that in our chart of accounts to signify where this, how these transactions are tagged. And I'll go through and illustrate this here in just a minute. The department is the organizational unit, fire department, police department, finance, city manager's office, city council. One new term that we would like to utilize is a budget roll-up code, and this is just a group of similar expenditure line items that we have included in our budget. And I'll use the example, probably the best example, are things like utilities. We have a number of accounts. We have natural gas, electricity, we have water, sewer, some other types of utilities that we have. We like to have those lined out for management purposes so we can make our estimates and we can see exactly what we have going on. However, for budget purposes, we're most concerned about our total expenditures on that group of accounts, that group of utilities. So we have the functionality in this software system to utilize what's called budget roll-up codes so we can group like line items together. The object code is just the detailed line item expenditure. And we have some examples here, overtime, health insurance, those types of things. So here's an example in the bottom of the screen of an account number. And we'll just go through and show you how it's made. The org code is the combination of the fund and the department code. And we also have an additional 2 digits for future growth we can use to further delineate items. The next set of characters, the 5-digit code, is the object code. And that is just the individual line item that you see, or what we code those expenses to. So again, here's the fund broken out. This is the general fund. The next 3 digits are the department. This one is Department 180, which is the finance department. So some more terminology here in the new ERP system. It is set up to utilize 2 different types of budget adjustments. And the terminology here that we've chosen to follow along with, I think makes it a little bit easy. We have budget transfers and budget amendments. And budget amendments you're all familiar with. We bring those up to you, and any changes that we make that go through a budget amendment require 2 readings. And sometimes we're just literally moving from a capital account to an operating account or vice versa. So what we would propose is to utilize the budget transfer functionality that we have in the system. And this is essentially just an adjustment that is transferring an appropriation, an appropriated expenditure or estimated revenue to another appropriated expenditure or estimated revenue without increasing the overall appropriation of the budget. So those things where we move from a capital account back to an operating account or vice versa, or between line items within the same department, we're just moving things. Let's say that we had something in department supplies and it should have been furniture, fixtures, and equipment. They're very similar accounts. It would allow us to move that money to those different line items. We're not increasing the appropriation overall, so that would give us some flexibility to be able to do things like that. We would like to be able to have the ability to do that via an administrative approval process and have those items reported to the council and be ratified by the city council. So our recommendation for that course of action would be to have the administrative approval done by the city manager or the finance director or designated authorized designee, and then we would bring them on a monthly or quarterly basis to the city council so they know exactly what was going on, and that would be ratified. Okay, the next type of an adjustment would be a budget amendment, and where this would come into play is if we are actually increasing the total budget appropriation of all budgeted funds. So something that was truly unforeseen, or something came up. For example, one of the common reasons why we do budget amendments is we receive a grant. So now that's new revenue, but it's also a new expenditure that we hadn't anticipated at budget time. So under this proposal, those types of things that increase the overall expenditures of the budget would still come through the budget amendment process. The same would be true if we're moving these funds between, or moving the expenditures or revenues between funds for different departments. So our recommendation is the City Council, under this course of action, would increase the total budget appropriation by an ordinance through 2 readings, and that we could also adopt a resolution adjusting the appropriated expenditures, estimated revenues in between funds for different departments. And that could be done via resolution. So again, at this point, we're not looking for anything in stone. We just wanted to bring this in front of the council to see if that was something that would be palatable to them, and we would work internally. We've already started with some drafts of changes that we would have to the current ordinance, and it actually looks like when we first started diving into this, we thought we were going to end up doing a complete overhaul of the ordinance, and it looks like we're going to get by with just some subtle changes to the language. But it definitely will make our process a lot more efficient and less time consuming. And I think I can't see the note on here. I think there was 12 of 73 budget amendments that we brought before the council last year that would have been candidates for the administrative approval process. So it's definitely not all of them, but there are a number of them that we definitely could streamline the process for us as city staff and also for council members as well. So that's all I have. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions for Steve?
Let me give you an example, and you can tell me if I'm understanding this correctly. Because that's been an irritant to me, and I think there's some other people where we have to have this big process for just shoveling money from one account to another. It all goes for the same purpose. So this sounds intriguing to me. It sounds like it might be a way out of that and make things more efficient for us and probably for you. Now, let's say hypothetically that we allocate $1 million to Public Works, and in that budget we approve, there's $100,000 for some piping, for some new sewer pipes. And we find that one of their trucks breaks down and we really need a new truck badly. So, and we want to transfer $100,000 of the $1 million we gave them from sewer pipes to a truck. That would have to come before us, but it would just be a single kind of event. We would just approve the transfer of funds because it's the same department. Am I understanding that correctly?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Padragula, if it was within the same department, and we could work through any restrictions that the council wanted to apply, but on the face of it, if it was within the same department, within the same fund, and we didn't increase the overall appropriations, that could be handled administratively. Now, I know in our conversations during the budget time, there was some concern by some of the members of the council, and I would tend to agree with them that, and the example that was given is if we budget for 83 police officers and we have some open positions, that doesn't mean that we can take that money that we saved on positions and use to buy a new car. So that's where it comes through that we would be able to administratively approve that, but that means Harold and I would have to have that discussion and see if that makes sense. If it was definitely a large ticket item, I would think we could defer to council approval on those types of things. The intention with this is the relatively small items that are truly housekeeping type of items.
So going back to my example of moving $100,000 within Public Works, would that fall under your new procedure where we would come to us or not come to us?
Mayor Ross, Alderman Padragula, and the outline that we have right now, that would not have to come to the council.
Okay.
I should back up for a minute. It could be administratively approved. It would come to the council then, either monthly or quarterly for their ratification of those items.
So there'd be a report after it's been done saying this is what we did, and if we don't like it, what do we do then?
So Steve, I think one of the things we could do is, because we don't have to do anything tonight, but as this comes closer, is put a monetary
That's what I'm
limit
thinking
on
about.
that. Like if it's something over like $100,000, regardless if it is like within departments, it comes to us. But I think the intent is to free up some, this takes a lot of time, right? All these budget amendments that are like for $8,000. We had to do one for the cars, SUVs last time, and so, yeah, I mean, I think, yes, let's go ahead, go down that road, and then we come up with, some monetary amount that if it exceeds this, even if it's within the parameters of the same department, we'd want to have it come to us. And that would be the rare circumstances, right? Because of the 70-some last year, they were all a lot were probably under $50,000.
Mayor Ross, Alderwoman Evans, I don't have the details,
Right.
but I'm assuming the bulk of them were
They weren't,
smaller
yeah.
ticket, yeah.
And just following that further, if it were from one department to another, if, say, the police needed a new vehicle, if we transferred the 100,000 from Public Works that's going to be used for a pipe to a vehicle for police, that would have to have our approval if it's between departments or not.
Mayor Ross, Alderman Padragula, in our scenario that we currently have laid out, that would require council approval because it is different departments as well as different funds.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just continue to it, and one of our thoughts behind this is our ordinance is pretty stringent. So our thought process is that forces department heads to build some of this unknown factor into their budgets because we aren't very flexible with how we administer that. So we're hopeful that by having some additional flexibility, it may take some of that contingency that's built into the budget out of there and help us manage that in a more efficient way.
Okay. Thank you.
Harold?
So in essence, what we're trying to do is we're trying to balance efficiency and transparency with this, and this is why we're discussing this in public with you and the council. We're not trying to hide anything, but when it takes 2 council meetings and 2 readings to move $100, that's not very efficient, very effective. And so those are the types of things we want to try and do administratively, right? So if we have an example in the police department where the council approved for us to spend $100,000 on buying a new squad car, but the bids came in at $108,000, and the police chief comes in and says, you know what, I probably have a little bit extra money in my training budget. I could probably move $8,000 from my training budget to meet this. That's something that we would like to do as an administrative move, and not have to bring those to the council every time. But then we're also trying to balance that transparency as well. So we don't want to completely hide it from the council. So that's why we have the proposal in there and the ratification from the council. But there would be specific parameters in there, whether it's a dollar threshold or what that is. But the intent is basically, if it's been through the budget process and the council's approved it, I mean, it's hard for us to get that exact to the penny 18 months in advance of when we're making that expenditure. So we're trying to build that flexibility in there. But if anything, if it was a transfer between departments, or if it's increasing the spending amount, so if you've approved a department to have $1 million in spending that year, and now we need to spend 1.1 million, then that additional 100,000 would come back to council. That would be a budget amendment. But if we're moving money in within reason, within that $1 million that the council's already budgeted, we'd like to try and do a lot of that administratively, but there would be some exceptions there that would probably be pushed to the council. And that's what we're trying to delineate in here. Of course, it all comes down to language. It comes down to how you word it. And we find the current wording to be a bit restrictive. And so we're just trying to balance that efficiency with transparency and make it work better.
And if I could go on, I think that builds on what we did last year, the year before, where we loosened up the contracting procedures and gave staff members more authority to expend a certain amount of funds without having to go through a formal bidding process. And I think we had 2 or 3 different levels where if we're below 50,000, I think they didn't have to even put out bids and just could shop around locally for 5,000 less or something like that. So I think that would kind of extend that and again free up time and labor that probably isn't necessary. Let people act more efficiently.
Anything else? I think, Dave, it was a good presentation, and I guess I'm kind of leaning on if it's been approved, in the budget and it's in the same fund, I guess I trust the department heads and the city manager to, if they need to massage it no matter what the amount is, if it's approved, it's approved, you know. I guess that's where I stand on it.
So what you need from us is just, you know, we sort of like this idea, go forth, you know, develop it a bit more, because then stuff would have to come back to us, because we're changing ordinances and stuff. So, but this is just so you don't do all this work, and then we're like, why did you do that? That's a bad idea, right?
Mayor Ross, Alderwoman Evans, you're exactly correct. You know, we've started on this to try to lay out some of the framework.
Yep.
We can certainly, you know, make adjustments to it, or certain limits, or whatever the council is comfortable with. We have a lot on our plates right now. We have a number of issues, and you know, we have some folks that are a little bit short-staffed right now, so we're just trying to be, you know, efficient in our use of resources. And if it's something that the council didn't want to explore, we would take a different look, and we wouldn't pursue this any further.
Scott?
Dave, I just want to applaud you for bringing something like this forward. And as you are short-staffed and as stuff like that, please come forward with, if there's ordinance changes that can help make things more efficient, that can help create a better work environment. Obviously, we need to maintain transparency. We need to, as a council, continue to make big decisions, but hopefully there aren't rules or laws or policy that's slowing things down. So please, thank you for bringing this forward. And as far as I'm concerned, bring forward other things if there's things that we can change to make things more efficient and a better place for everybody to work.
And Mayor Ross and members of the council, and you know, just we have spent a lot of money upgrading software systems in the last several years, and this is just an area of synergy where we can adopt our processes to work better with the way the software is designed and gain some efficiency. We're already paying for the software. You know, it's a relatively low risk change. It's kind of low hanging fruit here. We can gain some efficiency and not have a lot of impact on the end product, but be a lot more efficient in the meantime.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you.
So wait, so is our sense, I want Dave to move forward in exploring this?
I think that's what we told him. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know if 4 of us told him that. Well, we did 4. Yep.
Moving on to action item 9, that's personal appearances. This is an opportunity for anyone to step forward and address the council. Now is your opportunity.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Jim Schumacher. I just moved here from the Fargo area. I grew up in western North Dakota. Let me tell you, it's good to be home. I moved here specifically because of your vote in September repealing your pit bull ban. I'm very happy about that. My puppies are too. We love it here. My question would be to, in regards to the ordinance, what was the number again, Harold?
I don't recall the number, but it had to do with urban chickens and not allowing poultry within city limits.
I would like to ask you to consider forming a committee again to readdress that issue, because I think in light of the economic issues going on with government inflation and stuff, it'd be a good opportunity for citizens to become a little more self-efficient. That's it. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address the council? Anyone else? If not, we can move on to item number 10, and that is adjournment.
So moved.
Motion by Paul.
Second.
Second by Mark. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Have a wonderful week. We are adjourned.